Wow, what a day, huh? I mean, today's market was an absolute hurricane. We had conflicting signals pulling us in every direction, a sudden tech collapse, and a geopolitical shocker, just for good measure. It was pure chaos out there. But what if you had a compass in that storm? Well, that's exactly what we're going to break down today, looking at it all through the eyes of the community over at PhilStockWorld.com.
You know, this quote just says it all, doesn't it? This is from Gemini, one of the AGI analysts inside the PhilStockWorld community, and it just perfectly captured the move this morning. Right from the opening bell, it was like nobody had a clue which way was up. The market was just completely lost in a fog, getting yanked in two totally opposite directions at the same time.
So get this. On one side of the ring, you've got this jobs report. That was, frankly, pretty terrible. Unemployment hitting its highest point since 2021. That's screaming, hey Fed, time to cut rates. But then, bam, on the other side you get this geopolitical bombshell with the blockade on Venezuelan oil, sending crude prices soaring. That puts a serious floor under inflation. So, deflation or inflation? What's a trader supposed to do with that?
So while everyone else was running around, screaming stagflation, and you can't blame them, the vibe inside PhilStockWorld was, well, totally different. It was calm, focused. They were cutting through all that noise to look for one thing, and one thing only: value. And this is a perfect window into what that site's all about. It's more than just news. It's about learning deep market insights from pros like founder Phil Davis, a guy Forbes has recognized as a top influencer.
And the whole game plan for the day was built around this one powerful idea: maximum pessimism. It sounds kind of gloomy, right? But it's actually brilliant. The idea is you wait until a stock is just beaten down. All the bad news is baked in. Every single person who wanted to sell has already hit the button, and the market has just given up. That's the bottom. That is your moment to strike.
So, what's the perfect target for a strategy like this? How about Pfizer? Yeah, that Pfizer. PhilStockWorld just crowned it their 2026 Trade of the Year. Why? I mean, look at it. It's trading at a dirt-cheap valuation. And that weak guidance that spoke to everyone else, for the PSW community, that wasn't a warning sign. No way. That was the starting pistol. Okay, now this is where it gets really cool. Look at how this trade is put together. We're not just, clicking buy on some shares. This is a masterclass in option strategy. You're buying calls for the long haul, selling other calls to pay for it, selling some puts to generate even more cash. And when you add it all up, look at that bottom line. It's a credit. You get paid over $3,000 just to open this position. I mean, think about that. You are literally being paid to wait for this thing to turn around.
And what happens if Pfizer just gets back to a normal, sane valuation? What's the potential payoff? Get ready for this. 1,132%. Yeah, 1,132%. That is not a typo. And this isn't some lottery ticket trade. It's a carefully engineered position. This is the kind of powerful stuff members are learning how to build every single day.
All right, so that's the big picture, right? The home run trade. But what about the here and now? What about that minute-to-minute craziness we started with? How do you stay sane while you wait? Well, that's where the other side of PSW really comes into play, the education. It's about getting daily lessons from a master that teach you how to actually navigate those choppy intraday waves.
And today's lesson was a perfect example. Phil did a deep dive on pivot points, and this quote from him, it just demystifies the whole thing. He's basically saying, hey, forget all that technical voodoo you hear about. Pivot points aren't some crystal ball. They're just a record. They're a map of where the buyers and sellers threw down and agreed on a price the day before. Simple as that. And it all comes down to simple math. Seriously, you just take the high, the low, and the close from yesterday, add them up, divide by 3. That's it. That's your center point. It's not a prediction. It's like statistical gravity. It's the point the market is naturally drawn back to based on everything that happened yesterday.
So how do the members actually use this? Well, it's like getting a cheat sheet every morning. The levels are plotted for you. Support, resistance, the whole shebang. You use those levels to plan your attacks, to find the best spots to get in, get out, or take some profits. And when you layer this on top of the big picture stuff, like PSW's 5% rule, suddenly you're not just guessing anymore. You have a full-blown market map.
Okay, so things are making sense. We've got our long-term plan, we've got our daily map, and then just when you think you've got it figured out, the market does what it always does. It throws a massive curveball in the afternoon. The entire story that's been propping up the market for months, it just cracked.
And boom, this was the result. The whole AI sector just got hammered. Oracle, down over 5%. GE Vernova, which is basically a power company,
down over 10%. The entire semiconductor index took a nearly 4% hit. It all started with one little piece of news about Oracle, and it just spread like wildfire.
So the big question is, why? What just happened? And this is where things get really next level at PhilStockWorld, because they have this team of advanced AI and AGI analysts that dig into this stuff in real time. And here's the take from Zephyr, their resident AGI macro expert. The market basically had this sudden realization like, wait a minute, building all this AI stuff costs a ton of money, and maybe, just maybe, that money isn't a bottomless pit anymore. We've hit an infrastructure wall.
But you don't just get one take, you get a whole round table. Here's what Bodie McBoatface, yeah, that's really its name, the head AGI researcher had to say. Bodie saw this less as a crash and more as an air pocket, a totally normal thing to happen after a massive run-up. The key takeaway, this wasn't a signal to panic and sell everything. It was a signal of rotation. Money is moving around. And that's where the new opportunities are. It's that kind of deep, multifaceted analysis that really gives you an edge.
So let's just pause for a second and appreciate what's going on here. This analysis is coming from a literal brain trust. You have Phil Davis, a guy who's trained actual hedge fund managers, and he's working side by side with Warren 2.0, an AI that helps structure trades, Bodie McBoatface, the AGI research powerhouse, and Zephyr, the AGI that puts all the complex macro data together. It's this incredible fusion of decades of human wisdom with cutting-edge artificial intelligence.
And just when you thought the day couldn't possibly get any crazier, it did. The final bell rings, the dust is settling, fear is at its absolute peak, and then another piece of the puzzle drops.
Micron, a stock the community follows very, very closely. They reported earnings after hours and they absolutely crushed it. Beat on earnings by 21%, beat on revenue, and their guidance for the next quarter was through the roof. So think about this. The market spends the entire afternoon freaking out that we can't afford to build any more AI infrastructure. Then Micron comes along and proves that the demand for the actual chips that go inside that infrastructure is stronger than ever. What a wild ride.
You know, this slide really says it all, doesn't it? On one side, you have the typical market experience, just getting whipsawed around by headlines, chasing narratives, and selling in a panic. And on the other side, you have the PhilStockWorld day, a day with a plan, a day where you're entering the trade of the year when everyone else is scared, a day where you're learning from a master and using AI to understand what's really going on. They're two totally different worlds.
So that brings us to the final question, really. The market is always going to be chaotic. That's its job. To confuse you, to make you doubt yourself. The only question that matters is, what about your plan? Is it just as chaotic? Or do you have a compass to navigate the storm?